reports tonight that a whistleblower says Mike Flynn began potentially selling out the Trump administration within minutes of Donald Trump taking office. In the archives of public corruption, this allegation would be the fastest effort to potentially sell access in American history. Let me tell you what we're learning tonight. This is a doozy. A whistleblower who spoke to Congress says that exactly 11 minutes after Donald Trump was sworn in as President of the United States, Mike Flynn was texting a businessman about a plan that could enrich Flynn by pushing a Russian business project. The accusation is that Flynn wanted to basically rip up those Russia sanctions so he could do better and help his business friends. Just consider how remarkable this claim is. Mike Flynn, so eager and focused on all of this that he literally could not wait to get off the stage at the inaugural address to push it forward, according to this allegation. And this is not just something plucked out of the blue. Let me tell you tonight, before we get to our experts, about how this all came about. Democratic Congressman Elijah Cummings says that he received this account and then he consulted with Bob Mueller's office, and he determined that he believes it to be credible. Now, Mueller's office and Flynn's attorney have not immediately responded to our requests for comment. As always, I will bring you that when we get it. But the context is Flynn had been pushing business in partnership with Russian interests, working for ACU strategic partners all the way through June 2016. And on Inauguration Day, when Flynn would formally assume his powers, and while he was not literally working for that company anymore, the allegation is that he would then still go ahead at 12:11 p.m. and send out a text about his plan to shape Russia policy for these business people. Cummings says there's evidence Flynn texted this business partner at 12:11, and this was the exact moment.
I will fight for you with every breath in my body, and I will never, ever let you down. America will start winning again, winning like never before.
Allegedly, at the very time Donald Trump promising there to put America first, Flynn texting about rolling back Russia's sanctions to help business partners. Cummings' office relieved this photo of Flynn during the inauguration, which they say seems to suggest he was looking at his phone. Now, let's take a breath, because this is a doozy. Why am I telling you about this? Why is this story breaking tonight, 5 days after Flynn pleaded guilty? Well, Congressman Cummings says that Mueller's staff asked him to keep this private until they completed, quote, certain investigative steps. Well, we know one of those steps seems to be Flynn flipping. If there are others, maybe interviewing people implicated in the plan or trying to get a hold of their communications and evidence, if those steps occurred, we don't know about that yet. Karen Loeffler served as a U.S. attorney under President Obama and has 30 years experience with the Department of Justice. And Sophia Nelson, a former counsel to the Republicans on the House Oversight Committee. This is certainly an oversight issue. Welcome to you both. Karen, this is an allegation, but it is one that has gone through some process, because Cummings says he reviewed it and he spoke to the special counsel about it. If the special counsel got back to Cummings and said, well, there's nothing to this, we probably wouldn't be seeing this out in public today.
Well, I'm sure that's the case, but I would, again, it's speculation, but the way things work, when the special counsel spoke to Mr. Flynn about possibly pleading, they would have taken a proffer first. What information did Mr. Flynn have? And they would have corroborated before making the deal that they made. Again, I don't know the facts of it, and Mr. Mueller has been very careful about keeping them appropriately secret. But that's what, that would have been the process before the plea. So I would assume that the request to keep it quiet until they were done with their processes, making sure that they had access to all the information they needed before the public could find out about this.
Karen, as you know, corruption cases can be hard to win, even when you have strong evidence of people potentially helping other people. And that's because it has to be a true and total quid pro quo. We don't know enough yet about the whole story, as you mentioned, and yet the fact that there's an allegation of a text literally sent from during the inauguration that Mike Flynn is not just a random person, but is someone who's already pleaded guilty and said he lied about sanctions being a part of this plot. Walk us through how prosecutors would look at these types of allegations. What questions would they ask? What work would they do to figure out if they might have a corruption charge?
Well, a lot of the corruption charges go to lying. I mean, people rarely lie unless they're, and especially in public office, unless there's a reason to lie. And there are forms that you have to fill out in order to get public jobs. I mean, when you swear in a job working for the public, you work for the people of the United States, and you were required to fill out those forms honestly and truthfully for a very good reason. So some of the steps would be determining, you know, tracing the links and the emails and the electronic communications to determine what was actually said and what was done. And it sounds here like there is an electronic trail. Looking back at the statements that are made, the forms that are filled out under penalty of perjury, and determining whether lies were made, and those lies are actionable. And so you track down whether there are knowing falsehoods, whether those falsehoods are things that matter, and this certainly matters because the public is entitled to know in the open what your contacts are and who you are serving when you're representing and being a part of the United States government.
Right, and whether, Sophia, this individual, Mike Flynn, was maybe interested in taking actions on behalf of the United States for his own buddies, business friends, or his own enrichment, which is very different from having a policy view. That's some of the law. You're in Washington on the politics. How is this story hitting Washington right now at a time where Donald Trump's gotten plenty of bad news this week?
Well, a couple things to put into context. First of all, prosecutors and special counsel are not in the habit of offering deals to people that they're investigating, i.e., in this case, Michael Flynn, unless there's somebody else they want you to talk about, tell them about, or help them to get. That's the first thing that's very important, because if it's just Michael Flynn doing business for Michael Flynn and looking out for Flynn's business and his buddies, then just prosecute Michael Flynn and then stand up and tell the American people there's no there there. That hasn't happened. That's the most important thing to keep in mind here as this story continues to unfold, Ari. The politics of this is that it continues to look bad, that the president and his administration are under a cloud. Whether or not they colluded with Michael Flynn, whether or not he was directed to send texts like this and say, hey, guys, we got the green light, we don't know yet. But what I want every one of your viewers to keep in mind is that Bob Mueller, who is just an amazing man with a great reputation, would not have offered a deal to anybody unless he thought that flipping that person or getting them to talk would lead him further down the road to a bigger target. And I'll leave it there because that's the way this works.
Right. Let me play briefly Donald Trump, who has shown some restraint some of the time. He got into a lot of trouble when a tweet went out under his account, but happened to be the one and only tweet that was ever ghostwritten by a lawyer. That is, as you can understand, a very plausible story. And now today, when asked about it, he basically is trying to use discipline and not answer these questions. Take a look.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Any plans to pardon General Flynn, Mr. President?
Thank you very much.
Any plans to pardon General Flynn, Mr. President?
Thanks, President. Thank you.
Thank you. Sophia, what do you make of his discipline there in the press room setting?
First of all, he has no discipline, zero discipline. And you and I both know that just because he didn't take a question doesn't mean that we're not going to see a tweet about it a little bit later. I don't know that I believe. I was an attorney for a number of years. I worked on the Hill. I don't know attorneys who are in the habit of authoring tweets or Facebook posts or otherwise for their clients. When an attorney issues a statement that he or she writes, it's under their name on behalf of the client.
Or if it's written, Sophia, it usually has some evidence of being written. I've never heard of...
Me either.
You know, it's like freestyling. I've never heard of a lawyer taking something about a criminal matter and only saying, oh, I dictated over the phone. I never looked at the words.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy. It doesn't happen in the real world. But, you know, again, we're not in the real world anymore.
We're not in the real world. That's what I always try to remember. This is all a big dream. But thankfully, I had two very talented lawyers with a lot of experience to walk us through the waking dream.